I'm Brian Van, SportbikeTracker.com, and today we're going to break down the Graves steering damper kit install on our 2015 STG Yamaha R3. Okay, before we talk too much about the kit, let's talk about why would you want to put a steering damper on your R3. Well, in our case, we've installed a K-Tech fork cartridge kit, K-Tech Razor RR shock, and we've played quite a bit with the geometry on the R3. If you're going to race the bike, it has to have a steering damper. Where it requires it, almost every racing organization requires it. The reason behind that is it can be a safety issue. This can actually help to prevent a crash. When you have the bike a little more on the edge so it'll handle fast, steer real fast, they can become just a little bit unstable, especially over bumps and things like that. Having a steering damper on here will help control the oscillation of the bars back and forth to prevent a head shake. Okay, really important you have it on a track or a race bike. This kit from Graves includes the bracket here on the side of the steering head, the bracket here that goes around the fork tube. It includes a new steering stop that reduces the sweep of the handlebars. It was far more than it ever needed to be, especially for on track, and in order to use the damper, that sweep had to be reduced. The damper is sold separate. This is an Ohlins universal damper. We have a link to it in the product listing for this, okay? Installation of this. You can do it with a stock fairing stay. You'll either have to trim it, like I've done on my moto holder stay that was shaped like a stock stay, and we'll show you that later in the video. Graves says you can install this on the top. I tried to do that, and I had a little clearance issue here with the cluster, so I opted out and I went below. Or if you don't have a fairing bracket yet, Graves offers their own fairing bracket that is, of course, designed to work with their steering damper kit. We have a link to that product in the steering damper kit listing as well. If you like what you see so far, you're interested in doing this on your R3, we're going to show you every step of the installation right after this. Okay, jumping right into the install, we've got the Graves steering damper mount. We're going to mount it below the fairing stay. I'm actually going to have to trim my moto holder stay. You'd have to do this with a stock one too if you're using race bodywork. Per the instructions, Graves said you can mount it top or bottom. I mocked it up a little bit and trying to mount the damper up here on the top. We've got some clearance issues with the cluster, so we're going to pass on that. I don't need this lower portion of this fairing stay at all with the race bodywork we're using. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that off, just eliminate that, give me all the clearance I need down there. Their kit includes the fork mount, the steering head mount, associated hardware. They include, and this is also available separately, a new steering stop. It's going to shorten the amount of travel the handlebars have. If you put clip-ons on your R3, you'll notice as you start to really dial in the controls and the levers and stuff, you end up with a little bit of contact on the bodywork back here. Realistically, to be ridden on the racetrack, you don't need all that steering radius, not even close. So we're going to go ahead and install this. It's going to shorten that up quite a bit. That's included in this kit, also available separately. Now remember, when you're buying the mount, that's all you're getting is the mount. You do need the Ohlins universal steering damper, okay? We have that available independently on our site, and we have links in the listing for this kit for the damper. To facilitate this install, we have to remove our top triple. This clip-on cuff needs to come up and off. We'll pull the fairing bracket to trim it. Once we have the triple off and the clip-on cuff off, we're then able to slide the fork mount down into position. Okay? So we're going to begin right now with our steering stem nut. Okay, now that we have the steering stem bolt out, I'm going to loosen the upper clamp pinch bolts. 6mm internal hex, just using a T-handle here. Do that on both sides. Got to get it loose enough that we can pull this thing. Now we'll grab it and just rock it like so. Make sure you pay attention to the slack in the cables, right, and the wiring, so that you're not pulling on anything too hard. Don't want to damage anything during this. And our throttle cables right here are definitely going to be an issue. Okay, so we've got one of two ways we can go. Disassemble the throttle or pull that bracket off right here, which is what I'm going to do. I got a 4 Allen wrench. Bust that loose. So I'm not 100% sure whether I'm going to put this back in here or not right now. But in order to get that top clamp off, I'm definitely going to have to pull it. Okay, now the clip-on cuff. Okay, now let's take the fork tube bracket. Make sure you loosen up the pinch bolt. We're going to slide it all the way down. Just leave everything loose for right now. Okay, and actually the boss, per their instructions, that goes up. From here, we can go ahead and put the clip-on cuff back on the bike and that top triple. Okay, we've done what we needed to do. Slide that over. Okay, now we can go ahead and slide that top triple back on. Might have to push and tug a little bit here to get it to go, and get it to go back over that steering stem. Okay. Rubber mallet sometimes can be helpful. Okay. Just want to make sure this is seated all the way. Rubber mallet. Our steering stem bolt. I'm going to just snug it up just a little bit right now. So it's just sitting flush. Let's double check our fork tube height. Make sure it's in the same place it was. Okay, that is good. Not going to torque this down, just, just get it snug enough so it's not going to move for right now. Actually going to follow up here with a torque wrench, believe it or not. Okay, it's just enough to hold it now. Kind of take a quick look at this bracket. Definitely is nice having it there. It routes everything pretty cleanly. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and pull that front fairing stay. Like I said, in order to get the clearance that we need, you can see this right now, this bottom portion needs to disappear. It's going to have no impact on the structural integrity of the fairing stay whatsoever. Graves does have their own fairing stay that's designed to work with this, that eliminates that totally. It's shaped a little bit differently, so that is another option. If you don't already have a fairing stay on your motorcycle, you can purchase that along with the rest of the parts, and you'll have a complete kit. Okay, and you can avoid this step right here. So essentially what I'm going to do with this, I'm just going to cut it right here under the weld and make that nice and flat. Okay, like you said, just trim the bottom of that off, right? Real simple. These are the fasteners that were supplied with the kit. Go ahead and put those through there now. Here is the bracket itself. Okay. It's going to go through here and then point downward. We'll put a little bit of thread locker. Okay, a little thread locker on the bolts. Go ahead and get them started now. Okay, I'm not torquing those down all the way right now, just get them started. Okay, before we actually put the damper on the bike, we're gonna put the steering stop on, okay? Just gonna use blue thread locker on these fasteners. The fasteners you'll use here are the ones that were originally in these holes, in these locations. So just reusing them. You want to face it so that the ears are bent back towards the rear of the motorcycle, okay? Okay, like so. See, it really shortens that up. Okay, now we're ready to install the damper itself on the bike. You want to make sure you have the clamp positioned so you can reach these two fasteners so we can snug them after it's on. Make sure they're loose now so you can spread this apart far enough to get it to jump over the damper. Like so. Slide it on. Two fasteners. I'm going to start by running the one in that's going to hold it to the steering head. Really important that you dial this thing in. It's got to be moving back and forth on an even, level plane. Okay? If it's not, you're going to have issues. That's why none of the bolts at this point are tight. Okay, now that I have everything started, I'm going to go around and put just a little torque on each one. Just so everything stays in place and you can get the damper aligned. Okay. Now you can see there, that's running kind of downhill over here. Okay, and that's not what we want. We want it to be as level as possible. Okay, that looks pretty good right there. And then we need to work on the sweep. Snug this just a little bit. Okay, now we want to set the sweep of the damper, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to push it all the way in like that. I'm going to turn the bars all the way to the stop. That is as far as it can travel. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to back this off, because you don't want it bottoming all the way out when it gets to the stop, okay? So I backed it off just a little bit right there. You can see that gap. Because what you don't want is when you get to the stop, you don't want it just slamming and bottoming internally. There's no need to do that. It's going to be hard on the damper. Got that clamp snug. Check our sweep. Everything looks nice and smooth. Now we can go ahead and final torque on this clamp. You don't want to overdo these, okay? These are small fasteners, a lot of clamping force. It's just enough so it can't slide back and forth. I'm going to pull the fasteners back out. I'm going to torque the fork mount bracket, 7 foot-pounds. And then I'm going to put thread locker on the bolt that holds the rod to that bracket, and also on the fastener that holds this steering head bracket. Okay, 7 foot-pounds here. All right, that's good. I'm not going to torque the other two. But the one that goes around that fork tube, you really don't want to overdo those. So if you watched even the fork install video on this bike, yep, I used a torque wrench on that too, which I do not normally do. It's also important to note these fasteners should be double checked periodically for torque. A lot of motion here, a lot of stress. You don't want to find out the hard way that your damper is no longer with you. Run these all the way down and torque them. Okay, we're going to torque that steering stem bolt. This is 69 foot-pounds. It's probably freaking out I'm using this torque wrench. Just decided on the front end of this bike to introduce that. Okay, and these are 15. All right, got that. Now I need to get the clip-on cuff back in its position. And what I do on all the bikes, once I've installed clip-ons and I land on a spot where the rider likes them or where I like them, is I put a little mark in the upper triple clamp with a self-centering punch that I can use as a reference. And I like to use then the split in the cuff as a guide to where are they going to be. Max likes them just a little more inside. Okay, so dial that back in for him and snug these back up. Okay, we're done. Everything is installed. Remember, after you ride it the first few times, I want you to double check the torque on the fasteners just to make sure everything is good. A lot of stress in this area, a lot of motion, constant motion when you're on the track. Before you ride the bike, let's check that throttle. Make sure you got a good strong return. Sweep the bars. Look at all your controls, your cables, brakes, everything. Make sure you don't have any conflicts that were created by doing this project. So we've done two things now. We've installed the steering damper and that steering stop from Graves to reduce the amount of sweep in the bars. It was way overdone stock. It was contacting the bodywork. That is going to prevent that from happening, okay? Damper adjustment. 16 clicks of adjustment is what this comes with. Don't ever ride with less than 5. Okay, it's important to note that. And realistically, I think I set his right now, I just set it at 8. I put it right in the middle. When we go to Barber with Sportbike Track Time this upcoming weekend, I'll take it out in the first session and shake the bike down to make sure everything is good before little van man gets on it. There you have it. There is our Graves Yamaha R3 steering damper install.